To put it absolutely simply, it accelerates data, the management of data, the movement of data, but above all, for me, it accelerates the decision making. So it moves organizations, customers to a point where they can make decisions faster, service their customers that much quicker. And of course that therefore creates a competitive advantage for them, or potentially can create a competitive advantage for them over their competitors in a particular market space. I think these days everyone has just got a shorter attention span. And by that I mean maybe the younger generation, those that are just coming into the working world, you know, they've grown up in a world where decisions are quick. Their expectations are that much more refined than perhaps the generation of my age. You know, so their expectations are that much higher. They expect service to be delivered. They expect performance. They expect response. That's the word, to their transaction. If they don't get it, they will move on. They will remember it and they will move on. They'll maybe go to a competitor's site and buy from there. And of course, what that then begins to influence is things like loyalty, how loyal your customer base are to you. I think there's three words I really like here. It's consistency, it's repeatability, and the last but really important word is predictability as well. So if you can deliver those three to your customer base, what it does drive then is loyalty, and it drives returning customers. So, and that gives you returning revenue. And I think that's really important. And that's just one example of buying online, but you can see how that would translate into maybe trading, you know, financial trading online, where they're down to microseconds for each transaction. And if they can get a microsecond ahead of the competition, then they'll make the trade. And in making the trade, they get the margin. So it's becoming, as a technology, really critical because it reduces what's described as latency, you know, which is effectively delay, wait time, if you like. So Flash has advanced significantly in the last few years, and I would say that you know, it's been maturing over the last 10 years, to be quite honest. So I can remember a time when we used to give away thumb drives, what we described as thumb drives, as you know, as gifts at events, and they were really popular. And that saw the demise of the floppy disk drive. But as a technology, Flash, and that's what those drives contained. It was Flash chips, silicon, no moving parts. It's just memory, a type of memory. And that market has sort of grew up in the 2000s, and then around about 2008. It moved into sort of the business world. It became business class, if you like, and it's moved on from there. Flash has always had some challenges on the way you manage it. I think most of those challenges now have been, they're gone, okay? The vendors have made sure that they've addressed a lot of those issues with the technology over about the last 6 years. So it sort of came into the business world in around 2008. We were heavily involved in that. We had tiers of Flash technology to accelerate specific type workloads. So sort of performance when you need it, but not when you don't. And so that hybrid, so the combination of Flash and the old hard disk drives together performed very well, and still does today. And a lot of workloads are very, very happy with that mix of Flash, silicon, and mechanical storage technologies. So it's grown up. There's been many different versions of Flash since it came into the market in 2008. The challenges have been density, you know, how much you can squeeze into a unit of space. So the chip manufacturers of this world have been working heavily on that, and you've gone from, well, this gets a bit technical, but 1 bit per cell In the latest technologies, they're going for 3 bits per cell node, so you can see how they're squeezing more into the same space. And the next step is going to be when they start to do and introduce verticalization, so 3D they call it. So instead of a 2-dimensional, they go for 3 dimensions. So they stack the chips one on top of the other, if you like, or the layers one on top of the other. Again, it increases the density, the cost goes down. And I think the next big thing for the industry is when you reach price parity with the older hard disk technologies. So that I would expect in the next year or so, 18 months. Well, we've been involved with Flash from the beginning, really, when it came into well, let's call it enterprise class, business class. When Flash became business class around 2008, we came out with products that sat in the controller. Flash Cache it was called, and it acted as that tier of high performance storage that the customer doesn't really need to worry about too much, because what the controller and the software in the controller will do was make sure that the blocks that were busy, the data that's busy, is in the right tier, and does it automatically. And we've taken it a stage further. So recently we came out with a product called All Flash FAS. So in this case, we've taken the mechanical hard drives out of the equation, and we've populated this particular solution with just nothing but Flash. We've kept the management of the data and the integration with the applications absolutely consistent. So it's exactly the same as it was before, so that customers who are used to that and customers who want to buy into that particular philosophy, if you like, of my data underpins many organizations. Describes many organizations. It is their reason for being is their data. Without it, there is no business, there is no organization. That's how it is for many organizations. So that consistency of data management, that consistency of application integration has been really important for us. So coming to market with All Flash FAS means that we protect that model, and there are new models emerging, cloud being one. So it doesn't matter whether my data is with Amazon, whether it's on-premise, or whether it's with a service provider, it's exactly the same methodology for managing it. So I can flex my business in any way I like, and that's what I'm going to want to do, because I'm going to want to move my applications and my data to where the lowest cost model is going to be in the future. I've got to do that. I've got to be able to do it, and I've got to be able to do it quickly. So yeah, I'm keen that everyone sort of recognises the business value of doing that. Not just now, but I think that'll just become more and more important as volumes of data and the requirement to accelerate specific workloads just increases. I think there are 2 different approaches that I would say sort of summarise how we've developed the portfolio, the solution. So the FAS side of things and the All Flash FAS side of things, I would describe as, well, they're data management rich. The functionality there is, it's got a good breadth and depth. And that suits many customers who have different workloads, but they need that consistency of management that we've just spoken about. There are a group of customers that just want pure, unadulterated, extreme performance. And typically that group of customers or prospects are looking for different place to do their data management, typically in the application layer. So you just take Oracle as an example. Oracle has many built-in tools for how it can compress data, deduplicate, it's format aware, so it understands the database. But those databases are usually the ones that sit behind your favorite website, have got all your product details in, and need that consistent, high-speed, no compromise performance. And our EF series does just that. So it it is the extreme end of high performance. And what we have done is put a number of our products through benchmarking. And we're keen to do that because it's independent for a start off. It follows a consistent format. The benchmarkers publish what the workload is that they're going to test on the platforms, and then they gather all the results together and put it in a standard format. So it's got nothing to do with us. We provide them with the product, they do the work, publish the results. So we've just done that for the all-flash FAS as an example, and it came out in the top 10. Yeah, and they've graphed everything in terms of when it becomes saturated, but sub-millisecond. I think what differentiates us, certainly in the data management rich space, is, as I've said, it's the way that we've integrated the data management capability into the applications. So depending on what your application is, you can very easily manage your data. And we've said, the data is the lifeblood of the organization. It defines the organization. Without that data, you're nothing. So you have got to protect it. And there are some interesting regulations that are going to come into Europe this year. There's one called the General Data Protection Regulation. But by the end of this year, and the details are already coming out about that, they're going to go from, 28 different types of data protection in every European country has got its own version of it, down to one. That whole application integration, data management, data protection becomes a lot higher profile, to the point where the legislation actually says, well, you're going to need a data protection officer. Now, whether that will become mandated, I don't know, but it's an interesting diversion, and it's interesting that organisations, big and small, are going to have to adhere to it. So there is no getting away from it, and I think we're quite well placed as an industry. But I think Flash plays its part there, as does hybrid, as does capacity. So I think when you look at data and you look at workloads that in a particular organisation, you're always going to get one size does not fit all. There will be workloads that just need data online, don't need high performance, aren't spiky, don't get busy then go quiet. You're going to get the workloads that are spiky, that get busy then go quiet, such as month-end accounts, year-end, quarter-end, just off the top of my head. Then you've got the other extreme. You've got I need top performance all of the time. But having a consistent data management layer across those three, I think is going to be key. Because one thing you can bet your bottom dollar that everything will change. On day one, it'll look like this, and on day two, the business will come down and say, well, actually, this is the most important workload now, and that's the most important data, so I want it on the flash storage. And you've got to be able to move it, and you've got to be able to move it without disrupting everything. So non-disruptive operations is just so important, I think. So that's a given within the NetApp solutions in ONTAP. Non-disruptive operations and quality of service as well. So you can decide which workload gets the attention and which doesn't. So you can divide things up and make sure there's a fair shares, if you like, of the resources available. The one thing we looked at early on was, how can we make implementation easier? How do you get to that time to useful work quicker? So we've got it just down to a single screen that the customer has to go to. So it's simplification of the implementation time. Protecting things like the investment that the customer makes as well. So coming out with warranties that extend out to 7 years now. So what you pay on day one of year one is the same as what you'd pay if you go out to the last day in year 7. So it's predictable. Believe it or not, it is silicon, and you'd think, well, this stuff doesn't wear out, but it does. The more you write to it, the more its life is reduced. So eventually it becomes unreliable, which is obviously no good for an enterprise class. It's got to be, it has got to be predictable in its endurance. And we've got it to the point now, this is what always amazes me, within ONTAP we can manage the way that the technology is written to, and to make sure that we gather data together before we do writes. So we do one big write rather than lots of little small writes. Yeah. We've not seen a single SSD failure in the whole time we've been putting them into the solutions. Not one. So people will say to me, well, Laurence, how do you know that? Well, we have this thing called auto support, which gathers all the telemetry for all the systems worldwide. So we have an excellent view of how reliable and the endurance characteristics of flash, how that works out. We've not seen a single failure. So I think that endurance question is off the table. We've done a lot around things like pricing. We're always, aware of, because it's such a dynamic market, of where it is in terms of its price. We're adjusting continually, so the price is off the table. The performance aspects, we've gone to the Storage Performance Council, we've put it through the benchmarks, they've tested it. So that's really off the table. You can go and scrutinise that. I would always recommend that the CIO or the CTO does a proof of concept. But I think that never believe anybody. Never believe anybody. Get it onto the floor, get the systems you want onto the floor, do a head-to-head, do a proof of concept, and just know for yourself how your organisation's data works and how you're going to manage it, and how your applications are going to work with it. One of the things that I was very pleased to see with the recent announcements was a product called On-Command Performance Manager. So what this does is gives you visibility, and I always have the term, and I've blogged on this in the past, and there's no originality here, but if you cannot measure it, you can't manage it. Can't measure it, you can't manage it. It's just a simple way of looking at things. So any decision that you make, you've got to have the measurement. It's got to be data-driven, and increasingly, when I look at the landscape that we're moving into, many organisations are moving into the cloud especially, and the dynamics of that landscape, in terms of me as a business leader making a decision on where I'm going to put my next workload, I need laser-focused statistics coming back, metrics coming back, so that I can make the decision. So On-Command is a pretty comprehensive suite of programs now, and the Performance Manager aligns itself with the flash space nicely. So what I would say to the C-level staff is, just make sure you've got those tools to hand, give you the visibility to enable you to make the right decisions on where you're going to put the data, where you're going to move your applications, where the best cost model is for that dynamic. Because without it, you're blind. Flash, doesn't matter what type of storage technology you've got, without it, you are blind. And, again, you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So those tools are going to become increasingly important. Flash as a technology has probably got 2 or 3 more cycles, because it's getting right down to as dense as they can get it now. So hence they've gone for this 3D stacking, because they can't get it any more dense without losing the reliability. So there's sort of swings and roundabouts here, but there are new technologies. Phase change is one. A phase change technology, resistive RAM is another. So one thing we're very keen on is to make sure that the systems we come to market today with can adopt those technologies of the future. We often get picked up on things like not built from the ground up. Well, I think if I can say it, I think that's complete hogwash. It's like me chucking my car away every time because it's not built from the ground up and getting a new one just because I want that extra bit of performance. And now I know that the car that I'm driving today, I can get another 40 brake horsepower out of it just by changing the chip in the engine management unit. So really that's what we've done with Flash. You're changing the software to change the profile, to change the personality. You're not necessarily having to change anything else. We've rechipped the storage, basically, to give us that extra horsepower, yeah, and we can continue to do that.